First off, welcome to the new year, guys, 2025. Obviously, a lot of exciting things for the new year for everyone. And one of those things is going to be just what's going on in the club. So what I'm hoping to do with this keynote is give you guys a brief recap of what 2024 looked like. And then from there, launch into some of the new stuff that we've got planned for you for 2025. There's some substantial updates that we've been working on for a while that we're going to share with you right now, that we're going to be presenting to you in 25 and going into 26 as well. So let's launch into it. First, I just want to take a second to address the club from a leadership perspective. So I am the president of the organization. Jordan and I are both co-founders. Even though I'm the president, all major decisions in the club run through Jordan and myself. Quite frankly, most of them run through the leadership team that we have in general. I will say that 2024 was a bumpy year. We had some challenges in 24 that I'll go into a little bit more detail with you guys. The reason I'm taking some time to step aside as a leader and talk about this from the leadership perspective of the club is that all of the challenges, all of the headaches, all of the frustrations that have come up in the club for you as members, I do take that pretty seriously. Jordan and I both do, but at the end of the day, my title as president puts me at the top of the pile. And I do take full responsibility for anything that's happening in this club. The reason I'm saying that is because if any of you guys have concerns, challenges, frustrations, any of that, as we grow and have been growing pretty rapidly, I do want to know about it. I think the leadership team will back me up when I say I am constantly looking at how do we make sure that this thing never happens again. I don't want to put a Band-Aid on anything. We're always looking at how do we ensure that we have a process in place to solve challenges and issues and things that come up, so that future members don't have to go through the same pains. So we care pretty deeply about this club, and we'll get into more of that as we go along. But I want you guys to understand that Jordan and I, a lot of you don't know, Jordan and I, we worked for and ran this club for free on a virtually full-time basis, probably close to 40 hours a week for about 5 years before we ever jumped into it for any kind of revenue. We are dedicated to what we're doing here with you guys, the relationships, the club that we're forming. Jordan and I have made a pact with each other that, like, no matter what happens, we will find a way to make sure that the club continues on. World War III can come through, COVID, whatever. I mean, obviously we faced COVID. We continue on. So no matter what happens, we're gonna keep moving forward. We're gonna keep learning. We're gonna keep reflecting. Going to try and stay humble. Going to I know a lot of you guys might not be religious, but Jordan and I, we grew up in the church. We met in church, actually. And so we spend our time having conversations with God and asking where we can be of most value to Him. And we want to make sure that that we're a positive impact on you guys and in the areas that we have any kind of influence over. And so that's something that's pretty important to us. All right. That being said, let's jump into a few of the club related things. So on that note, this year really put into the spotlight Jordan and my conviction in terms of what we were doing and why we were doing it. And so I think it's important to start this keynote presentation as a reminder with what is the purpose of the club and what are our values, because we very much had to go back to them as our foundation this year many, many times. So first, the purpose of Freshline. Why are we here? Might surprise some of you guys, we're actually not here just to go do moto adventures, moto expeditions. The point of the club is and always has been about relationships and building men up and giving them support networks and allowing us to support each other to grow and have a certain degree of accountability. So officially, our purpose is provide a vetted brotherhood for men to grow through challenge and exploration. Moving on to our values, 4 core values at Freshline. The first is own your shit. So take responsibility for your leadership, your mistakes, and your life. Reflect, course correct, and follow through on your word. Second, serve the mission. Set aside your, set your ego aside and put the needs of the group objective above your own. I say this a lot, but I want you guys to understand that these values are not exclusive to when you're on an expedition or out in the field. We very, very intentionally set these values as values that would permeate through expedition teams, boot camp, us internally as we operate in a digital world, on our laptops, very much so in a family setting as a husband, father, community leader, business leader. So these values are something that Jordan, myself, and the team take seriously in every aspect of our lives. If you look at our phones, we didn't collaborate on this, but our phones, our screensavers are both the values on our phone, because we take it pretty seriously. So let's serve the mission, leave it better, explore the needs of the places and people, including yourself, that you can impact and leave them better than you found them. And then lastly, persist with purpose, set a goal and do whatever is required to accomplish it. Keep a beginner's mind, practice gratitude for your learning, and master your craft. The reason that these values were so important is because we had such a tumultuous year, and there were many decisions, very, very hard decisions that had to be made by Jordan and myself. And we kept having to go back to those core values and why we were doing this. And the reason for that is because we had tension in the club at the leadership level. So jumping right into the challenges, some of you guys might be familiar with the only investing partner that was part of the club, Kimper Olmeyer. Kimper came to us in 2021. He had gone on an expedition with us to Namibia. For him, that was a transformative experience. And he got in touch with me in 2021 and asked if we'd be interested in taking on a active investing partner. 2021, as you guys know, was pretty smack in the middle of COVID. Club was on hold, nothing was happening. But we did see that offer as an interesting opportunity for the club because we knew COVID would end, and when COVID ended, we all knew guys would want to get back on the bikes and go travel the world again. And so I shouldn't say nothing was happening. Actually, through COVID, we did continue to do campfire chats. There's a very few select group of you guys that might remember that, but we did continue to do the campfire chats. Obviously, travel was not happening. We took Kimper up on his offer to invest with the club. We mainly just did some planning, like loose planning, end of 2021. We all agreed this would be a bit of an experiment. We never put any money into marketing before the club or for the club. We also didn't know how ready the world was to even think about going and traveling again. So 2022, we very lightly began some of our marketing efforts, and that led to the very, very end of 22 was the first time that we ran one expedition and one boot camp at the end of 2022 as the world was starting to open up. 23 is where we decided, okay, we think this thing has legs. The marketing is showing us that there are guys out there that would be wanting to do this. And so we started opening up and selling in 2023. That was on a personal level, that was a challenging year because I was still employed full-time. Jordan was employed as a full-time paramedic. I was full-time employed in my position as a brand manager and consultant, marketing consultant for a firm I was working with. And we were working full-time during the day, and we were spending our evenings, weekends, working on operations within the club. But a lot of that was going through and taking assessment calls from guys. So we were putting in solid 80-hour weeks consistently for close to 2 years, because we did that through 23, and then we did that through a good chunk of 22. We did that through all of 23, and then Jordan and I decided in 2024 that we would jump in full time, and the club had grown to a level that it would sustain us if we came on and decided to do that full time. So at the beginning of this year, 24, is when we actually, for the first time ever, came and formed a full-time team within Freshline. We did that with Kemper Olmeyer as well. Also the first time that he kind of jumped into this full-time. I think it took that instance for us to understand that as we were working together much more closely, as the club was growing dramatically, we went from 30-something members in 2019 to we were already taking on close to 200, and I should say 200 guys altogether in 2023, ramping up to close to 324. And we started to realize that there was a discrepancy in where we wanted to take the club. Kemper had one vision for the club. Jordan and I had another vision. More importantly, I would say an understanding of how we wanted to operate. I will say Kemper, he always wanted what was best for the club and what he saw was best for the club. And Jordan and I have always been pretty aligned on what we saw was best for the club, but those two paths split. And that led to early spring of 24. It became very clear that we were not on the same page. And so initially, Jordan and I thought, hey, like we need to open up our concerns with Kemper. We thought that there might be a month where we were going to have to try and sort things out. Realistically, those negotiations got pretty serious, much more serious than we initially anticipated. And we ended up doing some strenuous, stressful conversations back and forth with Kemper that only concluded end of November last year. So what that meant was the majority of 2024, we had very different plans in terms of where we would focus our time and attention in 24 early in the year. And those got shifted fairly rapidly so that Jordan, myself, and unfortunate reality, basically the entire Freshline team internally, were very focused and very stressed on just understanding what the continued viability of the club would be, how it would operate. I think we were all dedicated to the club continuing on. It was what that would look like, how that would impact the team, how that would impact the ownership within the club between Kemper, Jordan, and myself. In the end, we came to an agreement, and that agreement has put Jordan and myself in a position where we now fully own Freshline. We've moved Freshline from the States to Canada because Jordan and I are both Canadian, and it is a new start for the club and for the organization. With Jordan and myself, I will say that since we signed the final agreement with Kemper, the team has been going full tilt in terms of trying to get back on track in the way that we serve you guys as members. So what did that mean? All of that, the distracted focus, we lost quite a bit of momentum in the club that we had built. We also missed commitments. We made some commitments to you guys as members, things that we were intending to fully build out in 2024. Some of those things were built, some of those things were done, but some weren't. Just because the important thing to focus on for us was making sure that we had a stable club and we knew what direction we were going with it. That became the priority over building out new things. So there were some new things that got initial development, but never actually came to full fruition. And for that, I think we owe you guys a bit of an apology, but I also think that we owe you the understanding of why some of that stuff happened. And that is that's something that both Jordan and I, we fully accept that there were lessons learned for us in that whole instance. So yeah. A few other things related to that was just communication with you as the member. We were As the club grew, plus our focus was distracted, we were definitely stretched from a resource perspective. And there were very few good processes and systems that were laid as foundations coming into 24. Less so than I think we initially thought, for sure. So a lot of those things had to get built out. So what does that all mean? 2024 lessons that we learned. The biggest lesson I think that we came out of 2024 with was that the original values that Jordan and I set when we started the club are what hold it together. And Jordan and I think we proved to ourselves that we're not willing to compromise on those values or the vision for the club. And we're willing to go to extreme lengths. I don't want to go into detail with this, but I can say that Jordan, myself, and the team collectively and individually made a decision to say that we were willing to sacrifice everything we had in order to make sure that the club continued on. And we were very much tested on that front a few times, and we were prepared to go all the way. And I think in the end, that was something that worked out for us. We also very much learned in 24, especially with just understanding the vision of the club and where we wanted to go. One of the concerns that we had was that we were getting too focused on moving away from looking at you guys as members and just focusing on selling expeditions, selling boot camps. And that was what we spent a lot of our time and effort looking at and discussing. And that's not something that Jordan and we didn't set out to run a tourism-based business to go sell a bunch of trips. I know that, I mean, these aren't tours that we go on, but that wasn't the intent from the beginning. It was like, hey, let's just see how many expeditions we can run. So we wanted to make sure we get back to the membership. And then very much just on the communication side, putting a lot of time and effort into really building good foundational processes and systems, SOPs, for the club. Thankfully, this is not, at least my first rodeo. I've been an entrepreneur working for myself since I've been 19. I've run a few businesses before this. And so I'm not going to say I'm a guru, but there's been enough experience building out my own businesses in the past, some of which still exist, but I've sold my shares in, that I have a sense of what good should look like. And I definitely saw at the beginning of this year, there was a wide discrepancy in the back end operations between what I thought we should look like to be able to serve you guys well and what was actually going on. So we essentially spent, I did a massive pivot this year from my specialty as marketing, had big marketing plans this year, shifted dramatically to make sure that I was helping the team build out the operational side of the club. So did far less marketing this year than I anticipated, a lot more building out of the back-end operational systems. Part of that is just making sure that we're communicating to you guys proactively and not reactively, so that there's less questions that you guys have as you go into boot camps, expeditions, etc. That you're getting a lot of that information before you even need it in a lot of cases. So those are some of the big lessons for the year. Let's jump into highlights. If you guys, by the way, if you guys have questions, we expect that. We're going to save all of those questions till the end, and we'll address them there. So highlights for the year. Definitely. Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't know where that slide went. Expeditions. So we ran a number of expeditions this year. New Zealand was one. I'm going to kind of run through the expeditions relatively fast because we can get sidetracked if we start talking about the details of these expeditions. So a few quick highlights. New Zealand, team went down there, did some camping. Funny story, one of the members, Joel, I don't know if he might even be on this call. None of his equipment came, so he slept under a tarp for the first while for that expedition. They ended up going and exploring a good chunk of New Zealand. Obviously, incredible views and everything there. Fair amount of camping. And New Zealand delivered on that. Nepal expedition, leader Will Byers. And the Nepal expedition, they the mission for that expedition was to go to try and get into the Kingdom of Lo, which was a kingdom that borders on Tibet and has been essentially cut off to foreigners for hundreds of years. It only opened up within the last decade here. And so these guys, the goal was to get in there and try and find this kingdom, and then also find some of the monks and stuff that were living up there and deliver a laptop and some school supplies that were needed for that for the monks that ran the school up there. Obviously super high elevation. One of the guys ended up getting severe altitude sickness, and they had to split as a team and make sure they brought him down. Pretty severe medical situation that we had to deal with, but we sorted it out. Some just incredible photos from that. Japan was a bit of an unusual expedition for us because typically we're going to less developed countries. Japan obviously is more developed, but Dean Hertzler, who led that expedition, he made sure that the team was really going off the beaten track in Japan and going and seeing villages and people and places that don't expect to typically see Westerners in those areas. And some really interesting stories that they came back with, which I want to elaborate on. So if you meet somebody from the Japan team, you can talk to them about it. But I'll say one of the highlights was going into a village where there was an elderly lady, and she had just sewn tons of life-size dolls, because one of the things going on in Japan is very aging population, very few young people coming in. And so a lot of these small towns, villages, especially the rural agricultural areas, they're dying off. It's primarily older people. Madagascar expedition, amazing expedition, very much off the beaten path. I mean, if you can call it a path, even. There's no point in really putting GPS tracks together for Madagascar because the routes are shifting all the time. We came just after the rainy season, at the tail end of the rainy season, and wouldn't have mattered what we put in the GPS for tracks because the tracks that changed based on the rain. Our mission in Madagascar was to try to get to a few remote villages and deliver water filters, because those villages had issues with children getting sick and dying because the water was contaminated. So we packed in water filters. And to give you guys an idea, this picture in front of you now, this is considered a main highway. This is literally a main highway thoroughfare in Madagascar, like Highway 5. There are many areas of Madagascar where there are no accessible roads. And so a lot of the villages just don't get the supplies they need, not even by truck. So this being the main highway, if supplies are delivered, they're generally delivered by large military style transport trucks. In this case, some of the villages that we went to, not even the trucks can get into a lot of those places. And so we were bringing in those water filters and supplies. I don't know why some of these photos, let me see if this works. Let me do a refresh on this because they were working this afternoon. Let's see here. Patient with me for a sec, guys. Let's do this. There we go. Yeah, so this is us delivering water filters to one of the villages. They're long-term water filters that should last a decade for the village near the wells that they're using. Mongolia expedition. So this is our band shot of the Mongolia crew. Mongolia is always epic, led by Nick Chazzy. And as with every expedition, even though we've been to Mongolia as a region before, Nick planned his own route, separate from anything that we've done in the past. And Mongolia is incredible because you get to stay with locals. In this case, they went through the parts of the Gobi Desert. Obviously, you've got massive steppe, unlike anywhere that I've ever seen in the world, where you can just ride anywhere the hell you want. Picnic in the Gobi, very romantic. And then, yeah, that's it. Peru expedition led by Fish. Peru is an interesting one. We definitely had some challenges at the start of that expedition. Guys were delayed by a few days. And so decisions had to be made about what would happen. The team decided to wait, which put the team behind, and then they had to try and play catch up. They got off route on that expedition. This was not a planned camp stop, but luckily part of Peru was camping, and so they camped here. It was 22 Fahrenheit, -5 Celsius, so decently cold in the high elevation areas of Peru. But what made Peru really interesting, this is actually really cool too. Peru, just so much in Peru. That's the old Incan culture / Incan mine, where you can just go visit these ancient sites where there's no one at. So this is the team rolling through there. What made Peru interesting is the fact that the guys went high into the Andes, super high elevation, and then they went down into the Amazon basin. The mission for the team in Peru was to get staple food supplies out to a very remote village that was up a tributary of the Amazon. And so they managed to organize those supplies with the help of a local fixer, get those staple foods together, and then we were able actually to deliver them by taking a boat upriver in the Amazon. So pretty cool opportunity for those guys in Peru. Mystery expedition. Mystery. I think most of you guys are probably familiar at this point, but mystery expedition. Jordan had this concept, which we thought was super fun, but we didn't know if anybody would take us up on it. In the spring, we decided to open up Mystery Expedition, which was, hey, you have to sign up for this expedition. All we're going to give you is the price and the packing list. Other than that, we're not going to tell you where you're going until the day that your flight happens. Within 2 days, we sold out that expedition. Jordan, he knew some of the guys would try and figure out where they were going. So
Mike?
what he did, yeah, I don't know if Mike's on here, but if he is, Mike was... Yeah, Mike was doing his best to try and reverse engineer where those flights were going. I was pretty impressed actually, and he locked it down. A few of the guys figured out through some strenuous research that they were flying into Istanbul in Turkey. However, Jordan being one step ahead of everyone, when we flew into Istanbul that night when the team was fully together, he told everyone not to unload their shit yet because we're going to fly to a completely different country from there. And so from Istanbul, the next day we flew into Georgia in Eastern Europe. And it was an incredible expedition. Georgia was highlighted by castles, rural lifestyle, these crypts that we found in the medieval kind of castle regions where people had died during the plague. You can see, I'm not supposed to go deep into details, but these benches here, literally during the Black Death, people would walk down from the fortress villages, and they would just sit here on these benches and wait to die. They'd sit next to the closest relative that they had that had already died, and they would sit there for a few days and wait to die so that they wouldn't infect the people up in the villages. And you can still go, and the bones are there. You can pick them up and touch them if you want. The thing that blew me away about Georgia was how many people still live like they did 500 years ago. They live in these medieval fortress-style villages. They still live rural lifestyles. They're still taking their livestock in and out of pasture, bringing in their crops by hand, like sickle, pitchfork, etc. So really just incredible cultural experience. The food was incredible as well. And then just able to go through these massive mountain ranges and explore the country that way. India expedition. So this is the last one of the year, just recently wrapped up here. The India team, their mission was to deliver school supplies to a really remote region of India. My understanding was that remote enough that when they actually went and they got into that region to deliver supplies, they were told that they were the first Westerners that anyone had ever seen in that part of India. And so they had to traverse some pretty ugly roads to get there. A lot of mud, a lot of issues getting in, but they were able to managed to get school supplies in. They brought those supplies in through trucks that we rented and organized with fixers, and we're able to bring it to the school there. So enough school supplies, I think chairs, play stuff that would last longer, and then enough supplies, I think, for a year is what we were able to bring into that area. And then you know what, there's too many stories to tell. Ask a guy from India. One thing I will say, and actually I wish I had the picture, is India is the first time that the entire team got matching tattoos for that expedition. So whatever happened, it sounds pretty special. Member muster. So first year that we were able to kick off a member muster in Colorado was a good chance for the guys to get together. Quick recap of the muster. It was a really good opportunity for members to provide feedback to us as leaders of the club, and provide a level of direction and suggestions in terms of where we thought we should take things. With the Freshline Games, I don't know if Dan Sensen is on this call. He's trying to kill me for this, but I'm going to say that there you are, Dan. Some of the stuff we do, it's a little gay. It's a little gay. I mean, it just is.
It's a little gay.
We have PT. We had PT at the muster. Another highlight of the muster was, I'd say, the informal courses that were taught primarily by Chris Clearman. We've decided to incorporate that as an official piece of our muster moving forward. To musters is that we're going to offer mini courses and breakouts at the muster for guys that are exceptionally skilled in different areas. We also spent part of the muster really just focusing on ourselves as men and areas of our life that we wanted to focus on. But within that as well, while we were doing a lot of the club planning, what was important to Jordan and myself is the fact that we really wanted to incorporate families into the muster and the muster environment. We thought it was important we think it's important for our members to get to know each other as a whole person, not just who they are in an expedition or who they are in a boot camp or who they are on a call, digital call. We wanted the members to be able to bring their families, bring their wives, bring their kids. It's the one time in the year for Freshline where we say, hey, this is the time you can bring the women and the children, so that we're able to actually get to know each other. And the point of the muster is to build relationship. And so you'll see some of that at the muster. So we did. A lot of the members brought their wives, kids, etc. And that's something that Jordan and I have decided will always continue to be part of the muster. That's really important to us, is that we're not isolating the people that we care most about from this life that we've chosen or this club that we've chosen to make part of our life. Part of that was showcasing some of the films that we hadn't released yet, so that, again, families could share with us some of those adventures, those expeditions. And then finally, we set some commitments leaving the muster there. So that's what muster looked like. All right, moving into 2025. So what is it that we're going to be looking at for 2025? The theme is going to be redirecting our focus back to you guys as members and making sure that our team is internally incentivized to actually care about the member experience more than just the expedition or just a boot camp. And so we're going to make some improvements to the club this year, which are going to shift us from expeditions to member value. So what does that look like? In 25, we're going to introduce you guys to having the option to buy into club membership as opposed to an expedition. So traditionally, what has happened is we launch an expedition list. Let's say, typically in the spring, we'll say, hey, we are launching the 2025 expeditions. We're launching the 2026 expeditions. And then a bunch of you guys will go and book expeditions. We've kind of done the same for boot camp too. We'll launch the list for boot camps and say, hey, this is the dates for the boot camps in 25 or 26. And some of our members will book boot camps, and then a lot of them are going to be coming from referrals or new guys that we're booking into the club, into boot camp. So what's changing moving forward is when you purchase a membership, part of that membership will be an international expedition. We really wanted to make sure that you guys understand that this club is not about that expedition. Cool that you get that, but you should hold us to a higher standard, and we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard to make sure that we're actually really looking at the rest of the year. I don't want you guys to think that you are spending money and it's for 2 weeks out of the year. I want you to really understand that, no, that's not why we developed this club. We developed this as a year-round thing. Like, what are you getting throughout the entire year? And so with membership, there's going to be a few different tiers. And the reason for that is because one thing that has come up as a point of concern, and Jordan and I have talked about, and it kind of frustrates us, is that as Freshline grows, there are naturally costs that come about as you grow as an organization, where your overheads tend to get higher because you have to just hire more people as a team in order to make sure that you're actually servicing the needs of your clientele, in this case, the members. Even though there's scale, there's more people that are buying in as we're growing. The overheads just get bigger. There's more demands on the organization. And in addition to that, there's been massive inflation in the last few years. Some of you guys might remember a couple months ago, I was sharing that our inflation in the last, since we started pricing 3 years ago, our inflation has gone up by about 40% globally, like our costs that we're looking at. And it's hard for us to stomach, like, hey guys, we're asking you for 40% more than we did 3-4 years ago. And part of that's because we're also having to plan forward into 25, 26, et cetera. We're always having to plan 2 years forward. But we know that that price points, they don't necessarily always work for everybody. And so one of the things that we wanted to introduce with membership is member tiers, and the different tiers will come at different price points. I'm not going to get super specific about price points right now. And the reason for that is because we're still developing what our costs are going to be in order to deliver these services to you. And so because of that, I'm not going to give you exact price points. Here's what I can guarantee you guys, though, before you get nervous, is that, I'm going to come back to this. There's not going to be any price hikes for current members. So basically, what you guys are already paying right now for boot camps, expeditions, the core tier is going to be tier 3. That's going to be what basically you guys are paying right now. That tier is going to come in right on, like, in average with what you guys are paying right now. The tier 1 is going to be that $100 a month. So a lot of you guys are already on that. Tier 1 is that $100 a month member dues. Tier 2 is basically half of what the tier 3 is in terms of cost. So this, again, I'm not going to give you guys exact. If you guys want to ask questions at the end about pricing, I can give you some rough estimates, because I'm not trying to hide anything from you guys. I also just want you to know, like, this isn't a, hey, we're trying to jack the price up for anything. You're not going to pay any more. We're just trying to accommodate the members, the good members that we do have, and find a way to make sure that they still get everything they want in the club, but at a price point that works for them. So this will be about half, roughly, of what you guys are paying right now for tier 2. And then tier 4 is, this is for the guys that we've had a select group of members that have been asking for some extreme expeditions that require some extreme costs. And so tier 4, we're going to develop a tier for those members, which is going to be dramatically higher than anything you guys are paying now. But that's because there's specialized custom services that we need to employ in order to do stuff like this. This is kind of like that we need to rent an airplane to jump into remote regions of Mongolia, or looking at Antarctic trips and stuff like that. So there's going to be a tier there. And then Virgil's not on the call, but you guys know Virgil. Virgil is concerned about what happens when you age out of the club. I am not that concerned about Virgil aging out anytime soon, but we are committed to having Freshline Silver. Freshline Silver is essentially for the guys that do age out, who are great members, but physically, there's going to be a point where they can't ride the expeditions that we're running. There's going to be an opportunity for them in membership, and there's going to be other ways that they can actually travel with expedition teams. Primarily, we're looking at support truck drivers, and there's going to be a unique position for them within the club that's going to be super cost effective. Let's say that. Because we're kind of hoping that that a good chunk of guys end up there, including Jordan and myself. There's going to be a point where we can't ride anymore, and we're going to want that service as well. There's going to be opportunities for us to still be with the guys, still travel. We will never cut off a good Freshline member. There's always going to be opportunities for those guys in the club. So going into a little bit more detail, what does it mean to buy membership as opposed to just buying your expedition? Here's what it means. Your membership is going to include, obviously, the true raw adventure around the world that we're known for. Your personalized gear and apparel. Still, you're going to get pricing off expeditions as opposed to anybody that comes in from the outside that's qualified to run on an expedition team. You're going to obviously get the bi-weekly member calls, access to the member portal. You're going to get the partner discounts, invites to local rides, a global network to tap into, Freshline's annual musters, campfire chats, first option expedition team picks, a dedicated support team, global riding overwatch, and access to participate in the Freshline rally teams as either support or racers. I didn't put a whole slide together for that, and I probably should have, but that's something that Freshline has been developing for a little bit. But we're going to have Freshline rally teams that we're going to be launching into in 2025. Now, you guys might look at that list and you might be saying, well, isn't that kind of what we all get already? Yeah, it is. So there's a pretty decent list here of what you guys are already getting. You can continue to expect that. But wait, there's more. In addition to everything I just said, here's the list that we're looking to develop for you guys moving into 25 and going into 26. So these are suggestions that you guys have asked for. And in order to make sure that we can deliver on this, one of the things that we're going to do, and we've started the process on this. Jordan was primarily doing leadership coaching and assessment calls. We've hired Joey recently in the last few months to take over assessment calls. And part of the reason for that is because we want to free up Jordan's time so that Jordan will actually move in a pretty significant way, if not almost fully, into a community manager role, which is not a role that we've ever had before. So we want to make sure that we actually have a full-time dedicated role to make sure that all of these things get done, they get built out, and they're serving you guys. So what will come with that? Organize weekly campfire groups. So we have the huddles, obviously, bi-weekly. We're going to open up an opportunity for you guys as member to have much more small, intimate groups where you're meeting with the same guys every week. In groups of, right now we're looking at like 5 or less. And that's so you can spend more one-on-one time with each other, more accountability, and not just a lot more time as you guys go through life. You're able to share those wins and those losses with the rest of the guys, and actually have a support system around you for that. Invites to local ambassador organized events. So Jordan's going to be instrumental in, beyond just guys organizing local rides, we're actually going to be really pushing ambassadors for the club who are going to be kind of hyper-focused on making sure that there's an opportunity for members within regions to meet up on a monthly basis. So that just gives you guys as members a lot more face time, one-on-one time. Something that we've been doing here in Calgary for a while is a monthly breakfast. We do that last Friday of every month. So if nothing else, at the very least, we get to see each other and chat there. And for me, that's always been super valuable. So we want to make sure that as much as possible, obviously you guys don't all live in super accessible regions, but as much as possible, we're going to find ambassadors that'll bring you together. And even if you're remote, it's going to mean a lot more Freshline organized regional rides, like way more moving forward. Virtual group challenges, so quarterly challenges for the guys that we can focus on. One of the guys in the last call asked about a fitness, like, hey, we're going to spend more time on fitness. let me just give you an example of what this looks like. So right now in the member portal, we have the fitness group, and you can go in there and post, and you can get cheered on, and people can help you out. One thing that would be a shift here, for example, is saying, hey, rather than just having the channel, we're actually going to organize a challenge where we'll get guys to throw in $500 each. And we're going to do a fitness challenge where you guys have 6 months to work out as hard as you can, and whoever has the most transformation at the end of the 6 months gets everything in the pot. So just like, and then Jordan and the rest of the team, but Jordan actually paying attention, going back in, messaging the groups, messaging the guys, keeping that engagement high is part of what that might look like. So virtual challenges, exclusive course content in the member portal. We've started dabbling in this, but this is going to be something that we'll be fully dedicated to as we launch into the true membership. When you guys start buying those memberships, is having a lot more course content from experts in different fields. And so you guys can go in there and you can take courses on business, on a lot on different investment strategies, especially real estate investment, a lot on moto repair, moto skills. A lot of the things that we actually teach to the leaders in expeditions, a lot of those are going to end up in those courses. You guys can go in there, and that's all going to be free for you. The access to the member section of the Freshline shop. So we have been developing the shop on the back end, and we are very, very close to having that member section ready for you guys to go in and buy exclusive member gear. A little more on that later, but gear that's earned rather than just purchasable by anyone. Monthly Freshline Masterclasses, very similar to the courses. The difference here is that these are live, so you can do a live Q&A with experts in different fields, which we'll bring in once a month. Exclusive invite to the annual muster rally, so the pre-ride for the muster, making sure that's exclusive to members. Additional swag packs, so you guys do and have gotten swag for boot camps, expeditions, etc. We want to up our game there in terms of what you guys are getting. Member recognition featuring our member directory. So having more of a directory newsletter that comes out. We're also looking at, as part of that, we've started developing a Freshline coffee table book of expeditions for the year. So featuring different members and very much featuring expeditions in there. Participation in international expedition team. So at all membership levels, there's an opportunity to get onto international expeditions. Quarterly leadership check-ins. Those got run together, but quarterly leadership check-ins, there was also an ask for a number of members to have a group within the club focused on leadership, because so many of you guys hold leadership positions. Can we have a group that gets together and sets accountability at the very least quarterly? But even from there, having monthly check-ins with the guys that are interested in being part of that group. So a much more focused effort there. As part of that, one thing that we're looking at too is actually holding in-person leadership retreats. I want to see how much demand there is for that, but that's something that we're very open to doing as well. And then one big thing that is going to be a big win for you guys is the free, no questions asked expedition transfers. So one thing that feels like a lose-lose is when you guys come to us right before an expedition. You're like, hey, I broke a leg, or my mom died, or I can't leave right now, my daughter got sick, or whatever. It's really tough because we look at giving you guys like a partial refund or seeing if we can transfer some of that credit somewhere else, but it's a challenging scenario, and it's shitty for you and it's shitty for us because we've already paid for all those costs for the expedition. So it feels like a lose-lose. With the membership, because you guys are not paying for an expedition, you're paying for all of these things. The expedition is like one bullet point on this list. So you guys are getting all this stuff. You're connected into the community monthly. You're paying for a monthly membership. The expedition is icing on the cake. If you can't make the expedition, we've already accounted for this in the costs when you guys are buying your membership, so that if you do have to cancel the day before the expedition, you're like, hey, shit happened. that's fine. No problem. Pick another expedition that's got an open slot. And so you can move that forward to the next year if you want. You can move it to another expedition within the same year. And you can double up on expeditions as well. So if you're like, hey, I couldn't make it this year, can I do 2 expeditions next year? Yeah, you can, because you already paid membership. You pay membership for this year. As long as you're paying membership next year, you can do 2. So it just provides you guys with a lot more flexibility and a lot more opportunity to do these expedition transfers, where right now, unfortunately, it's a process. It's a process for you, and it's a process for us if you do want to change things. So that's going to be something that will be a big benefit to you guys. All right, so that's the membership tiers. The next big thing that we're looking to introduce is, we still have yet to name it, but we're calling it right now the Project Cert. It's a certification program, a training program that we're making official. What we kind of figured out is that we've been doing this all along because we had to. We've been training you guys, but that wasn't actually our intent within the club, was to develop a training program. We just figured out that we needed to, in order to get you guys up to par with where we need you for expeditions. If not even probably a little further than we have pushed you already. So what is this Project Cert going to look like? There's going to be quite a few more individualized courses within this certification program than you guys have seen so far, because so far the only programs that you guys might be aware of would be boot camp. And a lot of you wouldn't even be aware that we have a 14-month leadership development program within Freshline if you get into leadership. We're going to split this apart into something that makes a little bit more sense. And the reason for that is because, similar to membership, we realize that we can't always meet guys where they're at, even if they're good guys that we want in the club. And so here's kind of what this looks like. These initial courses, the amateur level courses, this is essentially just learning to ride. Forget anything related to expedition and expedition skills. 3 levels here: dirt rider, off-road rider, and then this is advanced off-road rider or adventure off-road rider. Essentially, this is getting into dirt. This is small obstacles. And then this course, if you graduate this is essentially certifying that from a riding standpoint, you can tackle anything that we're tackling around the world on these expeditions. That's the start point. What might be worth mentioning right now is that what we're attempting to get you guys to within boot camp is this off-road rider status. But what we're finding is that we're getting guys in boot camp that are still sitting at dirt rider. And it's, quite frankly, it's a level below where we need you to be just coming into boot camp. In a perfect world, you'd be certified in this coming out of boot camp, this advanced off-road rider. I'll come back to that later. Then you've got the adventure level. All of these courses, this essentially, for the way that you guys would understand it, consider this middle section to be boot camp. However, we've done a pretty significant relook at boot camp. I've had many hours of conversation with PD, Ruan, who's one of our instructors out there, Fish, Jordan, etc. And we're already beta testing this version of boot camp, which is much clearer in terms of what is it that we're teaching in a structured way. And the reason that we're doing this is because we need it to prepare you guys for the roles within an expedition team. So this is just your riding. These are roles within an expedition team. You guys might recognize some of them. There are a few roles that we have always had, but we never formalized until we really sat down and said, hey, what's needed as roles within an expedition team? One that you guys might not recognize is adventure engineer. We understood that on these complex expeditions, there's a lot of times where the route that we expected was going to be a route is no longer a route. And so we have to either build our way through or shovel our way through. Or if we have an injured rider that is not near enough to a road, we have to figure out a way, how do we transport that person to where they need to be? That's where the adventure engineer comes in and is able to manufacture, route find, set up pulley systems if they need to, build bridges, build rafts, whatever they need to do in order to get the team through. Because we've ended up in those scenarios more often than even we thought. And so luckily, most of the time, we either figured out as a team, and there's almost always a guy on the team who's good at that. We realized, oh, that's a role we actually need within the expedition team. So these are all roles within that. One additional change that's going to be incorporated in boot camp that you guys will not have seen is the expedition teams challenger. The capstone, there's always been a capstone on boot camp. We're going to level deeper on that capstone. The capstone now will be a 24-hour challenge. You can opt out of that at any point, but the intention there is to try and replicate some of the strains that we get on expedition. What we really learned in 24 is that there's a lot of guys that think if they make it through boot camp's going to be the hardest thing they'll ever do. And then they get into expeditions and realize that boot camp was a bit of a case test compared to some of the expedition scenarios that we get ourselves into. And so we wanted to do a better job replicating the needs the needs of the team members. Let me rephrase what we need out of team members in order to be a contributing member to a team. And so we're going to push you harder than we have, not necessarily physically. I don't want you guys to get too wrapped up in like, oh, do I have to do 1,000 push-ups? No, this isn't Navy SEAL boot camp, but it is saying, hey, there are times on expeditions where we need to keep going much, much longer and further than we thought. And so there have been expedition days, not infrequently, where we're going for 16, 18, 20 hours because there is no spot to stop here on the side of this mountain that we thought there might be, or we're stuck here in the mud. There's no spot to pitch tents. Like, we got to keep going. Or we've had injured riders and like, well, we're not just going to throw them off the side of a cliff and call it good. Like, we got to keep going. So we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. This would basically be the graduating point for boot camp. From there, you start getting into certifying yourself within expeditions, within the teams. And this essentially is more or less experience within the teams, the number of expeditions that you're running. And then from there, what some of you guys might be familiar with are the expedition leader training that we're doing. Again, we're going to go much deeper, more formalized on the expedition leader training. One thing that we're developing that you guys have asked for is a leadership specific boot camp, which is something that we're looking to beta test towards the end of this year. And then from there, you're going into an actual master's instructors level so that you're actually instructing guys within this system. What this allows us to do, maybe how this ties into new membership. So let's just focus on the first little bit here. Jordan, can you mute whoever's got the background noise there? Maybe it's you.
Yep. Probably.
I'm just going to focus on the first section here, basically to the end of boot camp. So essentially, this training program is a program that we're going to, because we've already developed it, we have been developing, we've been refining it. We're going to license this program out. So essentially what we're going to do is allow people from around the world. We have a few organizations that we're talking to pretty intently right now, primarily in the US, who are going to get familiar with our training program. The intent of this program and what makes it unique is the fact that it's not adventure moto courses. There are lots of adventure moto courses out there, albeit the first few levels are similar, but not the same. What we're training is we're training guys how to run international enduro, like moto enduro expeditions. So what does that mean? International enduro expeditions as a team. So everything is team-based training. It's also obviously moto-based, but it's how to get through. This isn't here's how to ride a dirt road. It's much more complex than that. And so training expedition teams is what this whole system is meant to do. We've also found a very interesting thing in our boot camps that surprised us, where probably close to 30% of the attendees for our boot camps, they're not even there to try and get into the club. They're just interested in the training program. And so we thought, we're already developing this training anyway. What if we open this up to a wider audience who want to just learn how to run international moto expeditions? And we've been talking with quite a few moto rental agencies around the world who would be interested in having a universal system that certifies guys. And that would give those certified riders quite a few perks with the moto rental training agencies. And the best analogy I can give you guys is what we've stumbled on and learned is that where the international moto enduro market is right now is very, very similar to where PADI, the diving organization, was about 70 years ago. And we did some looking around and we realized that we have far more experience than almost any organization in the world in terms of like organizing international moto expeditions into regions that no one's been in before. So it's been imperative for us to prepare teams much, much better because there's no going ahead and scouting the route and doing all of that. So we've had to develop a comprehensive training program, and this is quite a level up from even what we've developed before. And so because of all of that, this program and this training is something right now we're offering through bootcamp, but it could be offered through some of our licensed partners, and we're going to begin beta testing that. In the intent right now is in May, we're going to actually be able to offer this as standalone courses in the US, so that if you guys are in the US for now, and then eventually we'll look at going international once we've stabilized in the US. Essentially, you guys can go through all the training, or anybody can go through all the training. The eligibility to get into Freshline happens when somebody passes the expedition team's challenger. That's when they're eligible to apply to Freshline. And then no longer are we looking at like, well, do they sit? Like, where's their riding? Where do they sit? One thing that has occurred and will continue to occur for a little while is guys will come to our boot camp and they'll start here, but they might not have these basic riding skills that they need. Boot camp will teach some of these skills, but that's not the primary focus of boot camp, is to teach you riding. So the guys that are good team members that make it through boot camp, they will have the opportunity, if they don't pass boot camp because of their riding skills, they'll have an opportunity to go to the closest licensed trainer who's training our system. And they can go either and test the system, or they can just, if they're not ready to just test, they can go and do the course. Most of these courses are roughly 2-day courses. There's a few in there that are a bit longer. So 2-day, 5-day. Most of these are 2-day courses, which also means that for you guys that have been through boot camp, by 2026, you're going to be able to go, if you want to go and do these courses as a standalone weekend course, if you just want to brush up on skills within certain roles within the expedition team. And then obviously there's going to be more advanced level courses. The idea there is that at the advanced level, there's going to be an opportunity for guys to actually form a career out of this. So the moto rental agencies that we've worked with are pretty interested in having a course and a curriculum where we're able to certify people at the expedition ops, expedition team leader level. And those would be ideal guides for them to employ. And then at this level, people could even run their own style business, running expeditions that are Freshline style. It's not the same as being part of the club, but similar-ish. So that provides opportunity for guys coming through boot camp to still make it into Freshline membership if the riding is the piece that's holding them back. Moving on from that, a few quick notes on just a few developments for 25. Member apparel. I know there's been a lot of questions about the jackets. I just recently finally got the first shipment of jackets in from Pakistan. Picked them up. They're in my garage. I brought them here so that I could inspect them. Yeah, Justin, if you're on the call, you're featured here, man. The quality looks decent on the jackets. That's why I wanted them out here. Now that I've inspected them, the next step is to get them onto the Freshline shop for you guys, for that member section. And then along with it, more importantly, the thing that's kind of the next step for us now is finalizing the patches. The patch designs have been finalized for a while. It's making sure that the patch sizing is working with the final production jackets. And the reason that there's a bit of a discrepancy is because the Velcro sizes have changed slightly on the jacket. So I just want to make sure that the patches are lining up with the V4 jacket that we ended up producing here. I am leery to give you a timeline, but I can promise you absolutely that in 2025, you guys are going to be able to order jackets. I'm shooting for definitely within Q1. You guys are going to be able to have a jacket with the patches in your hands. So we are much closer than we've ever been. Jerseys. So new jersey design for 25. These are the boot camp jerseys, and these are the expedition jerseys. One thing that you guys are going to notice that's different on the jersey in 2025 is the fact that we've got our partners and sponsors on the jerseys. And the reason for that is because one of the plays for Freshline in 2025 is to continue building out our media presence. A good chunk of that now is focused, was in the past focused on Instagram. Now our primary focus is going to shift to YouTube. We had some growth last year. We went from basically 3,000 followers at the beginning of 2025, and right now we sit at around 24,000. Is it massive as a YouTube channel? No. However, that being said, in the adventure moto world, there's not many huge channels out there. And so if we can keep that momentum going, what it does is it puts eyeballs on us from the big moto companies around the world. Our goal is to bring in cash sponsors for expeditions. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to pass a lot of that value on to you guys. So that those cash sponsors allow us more opportunity to do more diverse things in expeditions. Overall, right now, I'm not going to make the claim that those cash sponsors are going to bring your membership cost down, because we have to see how many sponsors we can get. But at the very, very least, it will keep the cost down over time. So as inflation creeps up, then it'll keep that membership cost down for you guys, because we have a portion of our cash flow coming from sponsors. And in order to do that, we have a whole media play that we're planning on putting out on YouTube. And the reason that we've got the logos on the jerseys is because we want to be able to go into 2026 with media from this year, from 2025, that we can go and show to high-level sponsors and say, hey, this is what you get if you're actually sponsoring us on expedition teams. This is what it looks like, so that they understand what they're actually getting as part of that. This is what you guys see on the jerseys. There's also there's much more to the sponsorship level than just getting their logo on a jersey, but for your intent and purposes, that's why the logos are there. All right, guys, that wraps the presentation. I did go over by 15 minutes here, not quite. There are a few things before we open up to general Q&A. There's a couple of major questions that we're going to ask you, and that's related to the membership tiers and the training system that we talked about there. The questions we have are, we've done a lot of work in those membership tiers, taking a look at what they look like. The question that we've got for you is there anything that you would like to see in the membership tiers included as part of your Freshline membership? Is there something that, knowing what you know about the club, knowing what you know about the guys, anything that you'd love to see in there? If that's the case, what I want you to do is just type it in the chat box. Say whatever it might be. Hey, it'd be cool if you guys had X or included X in membership, because now that you guys are very aware that this is not just it's a 2-week expedition, there's a lot more to it. You can make those requests, and then our job is to figure out how to make that a reality. So if you have anything that you can think of that you'd like to see in those membership tiers before we lock those in, make a suggestion in the box. The intent right now, guys, is for us to, for 2025, most of you guys have already booked into expeditions. We're going to be beta testing a lot of those new things that you guys saw on the list in 25. But our intent right now is to launch the opportunity to buy 2026 memberships in March of this year. So what that really means is in March, we're going to be opening up membership along with the 2026 expedition list, so that as soon as you commit to an expedition for 2026, you're able to put yourself onto an expedition team and have your pick of an expedition. That's the other thing too, is, I mean, you guys, you've looked at expeditions have always had price points. Expeditions won't have price points anymore. There's just going to be a price point for membership at one of those tiers. And then you pick whatever expedition you want. There's no price tied to it whatsoever. You just pick whatever expedition. If you guys wanted an additional expedition on top of the one that's allocated to you in your tier, you can purchase that at extra cost, and that might get specific. But beyond that, essentially, you pick whatever looks cool to you. Yeah, cool. So throw your suggestions in the chat box, guys. Along with that, so whatever you want to see in membership, throw it in there. And then on the training side of things, I know the training, this doesn't show you much detail. There's immense amounts of detail in every single one of these courses. There's full course curriculums. We've already been testing it out. PD and Ruan are busy building out obstacle courses right now in Namibia for this. They've been sending us pictures for the last few weeks. As we launched into January here. January was their big reset for guys going into boot camp. And we've been discussing and already testing elements of this course curriculum, and we're launching fully into it in January this year. But if there's anything specifically within training that you'd like to see, I want to get those suggestions in the chat box as well. So sky's the limit. Whatever you can possibly think of that's related to moto expedition, international travel, whatever it is, there's a good chance that it's somewhere in here. Because these courses, these lower level courses are days. The higher level courses are years. They're pretty substantial. Years with elements of multi-week training, in-person training within them. There's a lot. Like, I would say, maybe I won't speak for Jordan. For myself, I had no idea how much shit you need to know in order to run an expedition. Like, you'd think it'd be much simpler than it is. But to run an expedition with an expedition team in a complex environment, there are hundreds of key elements, and those break down into dozens, if not thousands of tasks and skill levels and everything within that. So there's a lot to train. So if there's anything that you guys are like, hey, I'd love to know X, throw it in the chat box, and we're going to take everything that's in that chat box, and that will very much become part of the discussion point as we finalize elements of both these things, the membership and the training program. All right. Now we're open to Q&A. So if you guys have questions, raise your hand, hit that hand thing, and then we'll work through them. Jeff, let's start with you.
So just curious, how do you qualify groups in the States that would be qualified to train people? I've got two friends. I've done the Tour of Idaho 3 times, and we started doing a training program a couple years ago to train people to do the Tour of Idaho. I don't know if you're familiar with the Tour of Idaho, but
no,
it's a 2,500 mile single track expedition through Idaho, but it's pretty rugged. It's generally 2 weeks, and you're on your own. It's a timed event, basically. And so, we've been putting on these courses for training for riding and mechanical, and they're pretty extensive programs. Because you have to be accepted into the Tour of Idaho. It's not you don't just pay a fee. There's actually no fee. You have to qualify to do it. And so I know we'd be interested in working with you guys and maybe helping train people, in the riding itself, and just sort of the basics of things, that might even help them prepare for boot camp.
Yeah.
And we're based out of Bozeman, Montana.
What our current timeline is, Jeff? Right now, there are 2 organizations that we're talking with that are larger organizations that are nationwide in the US
Gotcha.
that would have multiple points. We were intentionally looking at organizations that have a certain level of experience, so that like they're not cowboying their way into this. They have experience. They know what they're doing. That was one criteria for us. It was really important to us that we start slow with this. Like we start small. We test it out. We figure out what works on a training program agenda with these partners. And then the intention from there is to open up opportunities as we see demand for this training program. One thing that's surprised us from the very beginning with Freshline was just the interest in the market for what we're doing.
Right.
Like I said, my whole background is marketing, and it's kind of funny in some ways, ironic. Jordan will know this, is Freshline for me was always like a side project fun thing. And I was like, no, man, just let me focus on like my businesses and do my marketing. And then maybe when I retire, I'll focus on Freshline. And then when we actually started taking it seriously and started marketing, I was like, oh shit, this is the easiest thing I've ever marketed. And it's obviously
right.
Think of a better business I want to be in. So, markets can change, absolutely. But right now our bottleneck is absolutely the ability to supply demand that's there. Like we just can't. And so there will be opportunity for individuals to be licensed to use this program, whatever we end up calling it.
Sure.
It's going to be similar to the way CrossFit operates. And so with that, we're going to say, okay, is there a level of demand? We're going to have instructor level courses where you can come, you do a course, an intensive 2-week course with us. Okay, cool. Do your stuff. And then with that, we would need to be in attendance for at least the first time that you train in the States. We're going to have to organize that within our training schedule so that our certified instructors will come and watch you and make sure that you're actually upholding our program. But that's essentially how it's going to work is
with a set curriculum of some kind. Yeah.
Now, what I can tell you, Jeff, I don't want to get too sidetracked because there's going to be other questions to call. The fact that you're already in Freshline, you're on this call, and you've divulged your experience level there, I would say you're going to be top of the list when it comes to us looking at this next tier beyond just the beta testing. Right now we're beta testing with, like I said, 2 organizations, intentionally to try and keep this controlled. And then from there, once we're very clear on, yes, this is the curriculum that we want to be training and this is how the relationship works, then we'll open up to opportunity.
That's great.
As we see demand there. Yeah.
Well, I think everything you've explained tonight has just made me more excited about the whole being a part of this and being a member.
Cool, man. Glad to hear that. All right. Any other questions? You guys are easy. The afternoon group was loaded.
That's because they were Europeans. There is a question about having smaller expedition groups rather than 10 people per expedition. Would that change with membership?
It can happen. So, I mean, one of the questions that came up this afternoon was like, well, if you're telling me that we can transfer and there's no penalty, is there a possibility that we end up with expedition teams that are smaller? Yeah, there's very much that possibility. And we've ran a number of different scenarios to make sure that we can actually stomach that as a club. Part of what we are anticipating, we already know that on average, it's within a few percent, 30% of anybody that registers for an expedition team, 30% of that team is going to end up like transfer or cancel or bouncing out before that expedition happens. And then we have to refill those spots. If it becomes a lot more free flow, what we're anticipating is that percentage will actually probably increase a little bit, if anything. But the people that have shit that happened before an expedition in 2025 and say, hey, I have to jump into 2026. Actually, sure, I should say they have an issue in 26 and have to jump into 27, for instance. That will happen every year. So as long as, if we had 30 members in the club, it might be less tough to calculate. But there's advantages that come with scale where the statistics are there. Once you get a few hundred people doing this, on average, you just know that things kind of begin to become clear in the data. And so if 35% cancel in 2026 and need to jump to 27, that means 35% in 27 are going to cancel and jump to 28 or jump within the same year. And so we anticipate, because this is more free flow, there's also there's quite a few members that we have that are like, hey, I want to go on an expedition, but it's really hard for me to commit to something that's further out. I really need to know like what's going on with my work schedule, etc. If you're in Freshline membership and you can go whenever you want, then you can go whenever you want. Like if there's a spot that opens up, you've already paid your membership, you have a trip, you want to transfer earlier because that's the one you wanted to get into, cool. That'll work. So the benefit with the membership system is as soon as you purchase a membership, that tells us exactly how many people we need to have expedition slots for. And we can account for that in theory, even if all those trips ran no one, it really doesn't matter because we've already counted for it financially as long as you guys are purchasing your membership. So it'll work out. Maybe that's a long-winded answer to your question, but there could be smaller expedition teams. The intention is to be able to offer 12 spots on an expedition team. That includes the 2 leaders. So 10 riders, 2 leaders. Mitchell, so is the membership 1 expedition per year? So really good question there. You guys, most of you would be considered right now basically in tier 3, which is you get 1 international expedition that you're in and you're getting some of the other club perks. Obviously, we have all those other things we talked about that you get as part of membership. We developed tier 2 as an option for, let me say this, almost everything we've ever developed in the club has come as a suggestion from multiple members. Tier 2 is a suggestion from multiple members saying like, hey, it's challenging for me to commit to an expedition every year. Is it okay if I go every other year, every few years? Tier 2 is essentially an answer to that. So tier 1 is your $100 a month you're building up, and that could be over 5 years, 8 years, whatever, till you actually hit enough money to have credit for a full expedition. Tier 2 is the in-between. So tier 2 is going to be roughly half the cost of tier 3. You get an expedition every other year. So you're basically building up, it's similar to tier 1, you're building up a credit, essentially, is what you're doing with tier 2. It's just a higher price point than $100 a month. It's closer to, I don't want to lock down on pricing right now, but it's closer to around $400 a month. And then every other year you're looking at an expedition for yourself. And then tier 4, there's some crazy shit going on here, so I'm not even going to launch into that right now. Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to open up my queue here for the hands. I've got next on my list is Jeff, technically. Oh,
I think Jeff already asked. He was the one that asked about the training. So he.
All right, Yob, you're next on my list here. I think these guys are like jumping out as opposed to unmuting. There you go.
Is that working?
Yeah.
All right. So, question about with leadership, how does that fall in with the tier program? Are they 2 separate things? What's the vision?
No, not really. So leaders have always been given significant access to the club because you guys are leading. So we're going to treat it the same way. Essentially, all leaders will be defaulted into tier 3. You guys just get that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next, I've got John Hertzfeld.
What's up, guys? The rally team, and how do I get on that?
That's Fish. Fish is the guy that's organizing that right now. Yeah, I'll leave it with Fish. I'd say wait for some details. We started making connections this year to get ourselves into the rally world, and we're building foundations to have a team here going into 25. So how you get on that, timelines, all that stuff is going to be, let's say this, most likely we're going to have a lot more details when we launch the entire membership program in March, April here.
Cool.
Mhm. Sean Campbell is next on my list.
Hey, Eric. So I fall into that category of past boot camp with basically everything but the writing.
Mhm.
So that'll be when you guys get those that training and that certification set up. That's what I'll be able to go do and
Mhm.
satisfy that.
Yeah. So to get really, I mean, if you want to get highly specific, which I'm good with. So Tyler Yob, who I just talked with here, Omni Biker Tyler on the call, is one of the guys that he is a certified moto instructor. We're looking at him right now to be beta testing these early level courses here. So right now, Sean, it's saying, hey, yeah, like your first option, your earliest option is going to be looking at doing a training with Yob. He's just making sure that he's adhering to the whatever we call it. It's not the Freshline system. Just so you guys understand, like this training certification, it's going to be an entity that's an umbrella organization within Freshline. Freshline's going to operate and own it, but the intent is that it basically becomes its own entity with its own teams, et cetera, under itself. But right now we're looking at, can we get you to go ride with Yob? Yob understands what our standard is and what we're expecting him to train. And you'll be able to do that ideally by spring of this year.
Cool. Thank you. That
we literally have Yob and I have a conversation on Friday about moving this into action here. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you. One other question. So people that are kind of in that category, are we responsible for any kind of dues yet, since we're not even eligible for trips?
Are you responsible for what? Sorry?
Dues? Member dues?
No. You're definitely in a gray zone because you're not really eligible for expeditions. Technically, you're not actually, I mean, if you're not through the club, you know what? That's actually a gray zone that we haven't really talked about. The guys that we've kind of let you hang on, we've let you hang around.
Mhm.
There will be, I will say, moving into the future, there's going to be a little bit more of a separation between members and all the guys that are booked into boot camps and the guys that are kind of in that gray zone. But yeah, right now,
I would say right now, yeah, you if it's just riding, if everything else is, yeah, Sean's a rad dude, we want him in the club, there's no character issues, there's no yada yada, then I would definitely inevitability. If we cut you because you decided to,
You're kind of cutting out.
brings, oh, you got me? Then check one.
I might, you're cutting it out there, Jordy.
On check one.
That works. Sounds good. Yeah, I think that answers my questions. Thanks, guys. I'll just wait for your message.
All right. Moving to Les is the next guy on my list here, Les Warner. Les, you're muted, man. You gotta unmute yourself, please.
Am I still muted?
I think you're delayed, maybe. Say something?
Can you hear me now? Hello, hello,
Yeah.
hello.
It doesn't line up with your mouth, but that's okay.
Okay. I guess my question is probably a gray zone kind of a question as well. I haven't been to boot camp. I've only been TBD'd because I didn't know what I was doing quite yet this year as far as other stuff. As of a couple of days ago, I have booked my flights and everything to go to Nepal to go to Everest. That's in April. So then I don't know when I'm going to be able to go to boot camp yet. So I didn't know which tier or anything or where I would fall into because I don't really fall into anything there.
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, there's quite a few guys that are, I'd say, have been either on the call this afternoon or on the call this evening. We're going to be watching this as a recording. If you guys have not yet attended boot camp, you actually don't fall into any of these. You are in a bit of a gray zone in the club, but boot camp, people that have registered for boot camp, including boot camp TBD, they're considered a green. A green to us is they're green. They don't know anything yet, but they are. They're in the organization right now. Right now, they're currently within Freshline. As we move forward into 26 and 27, so it's a little ways off. The intent is that Freshline. So, here's a question: why have we developed? I mean, why have we developed this whole program and the tier program, but primarily this training thing? One thing that's good for you guys to understand is that when we sat down and did our annual strategic planning as a team here in November, what we really realized, in addition to saying, hey, we want to focus on the member, we realized that almost 90% of our time, focus, attention as a team is actually focused on one of two things. It's focused on getting you guys trained up and assessed. Well, that's one thing, trained up and assessed. Or just spending time going back and forth with you guys a million times about trip transfers. And so that's not the intent of the club. That's not what we want to be spending our time on in the club. What we want to be spending our time on is, all these things, all the bullet points. That's what we set out to do in the beginning was, hey, let's go serve a member. Let's go train a member and then spend 50 emails going back and forth with a guy about what works for them for trip transfers, etc. So what that really means is what we're moving towards gradually as an organization is that this certification program, even though we license it, we own it, you as a boot camp attendee, really what that means is that you're in the pipeline to start this, and you're technically not in the club yet. You're not in the club until you actually hit this point. You make it through the Expedition Teams Challenger. What that allows for us as an organization is then when you're actually in the club, we're not spending time training you or just a ton of admin time with literally, guys, we did hundreds of requests this year for transfers. There's only 237 of you. We did hundreds. Each one of those is like 20 to 50 emails to fish, and or the rest of us and us trying to figure it out and what works. And so we're like, okay, like how do we make this easier on us? That's a long way of saying less. Technically, you are not an official member within Freshline. You're kind of in this early gray zone right now, and that's okay. Like for you to be in TBD and you don't know yet, that's totally fine. That's where it sits currently. In the far future, guys like you, it's not going to be really an issue because guys like you, you're going to be somewhere in this system. And as a club, we don't even really talk to you until you've actually finished your Expedition Teams Challenger.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you for talking to me now.
Pardon?
Yeah, maybe I could just jump in real quick.
Thank you for talking to me now.
Yeah. Fish, go ahead.
I was just going to say maybe just some clarity that when someone purchases a boot camp to go to boot camp, they're purchasing a product. Once they complete boot camp and then when they move into the actual club, that's when they're purchasing the membership.
Yeah. Sorry, maybe I didn't make that clear. Yeah. So yes, what Fish said. Cool. I don't have any other hands up. Is there any other questions from you guys? I got David. What's up, man?
Yeah, wondering with the new developments for boot camp, if legacy boot campees might have an opportunity to go back and do it at a discounted rate.
The short answer is no. You probably won't be able to go do it at a discounted rate. And that, well, maybe in my head, I was thinking, would you be able to do it cheaper than you had paid in the past? The answer is no, just because, again, the inflation thing is real. Could you do it at a discounted rate from what we're charging the average boot camper? Yeah, it's something I would consider. The other consideration here too is that even though boot camp So bootcamp, the way we're developing it, bootcamp is actually going to encompass essentially from here all the way to here. That's guys that are signed up for bootcamp right now. That's what they're getting in bootcamp. If you sit in the States right now, David, which I know you do, you could go to Africa and do the full bootcamp there. The intent is by 2026, you could also just say, hey, what parts of bootcamp am I interested in attending or challenging? And you can do these as each individual weekend courses. If you're just like, hey, like, I don't really know if I want to do everything. I just am interested in whatever medic. Cool. Go do the weekend course on medic, which is going to be a weekend intensive. And then you can do that. At some point, you'll be able to do the Expedition Teams Challenger in the States as well. 26 might be early to say that for sure. 27 for sure. You'd be able to run that. In order to be eligible to run the Expedition Teams Challenger, you have to have at least attended every single one of these courses. But you don't have to do them all in that 2-week period. You can do it over the course of a year if you want. John.
Quick question. So when you talk about these courses, like some of us, of course, on this call are legacy, like I've already been to boot camp. Weekend courses, is that like an online thing, or is that a physical course that we can go take? Because I'm not an EMT anymore, but I spent 5 years as an EMT and as an instructor. Would I qualify to maybe help teach one of those courses, something like that?
It's a good question, John. So, I mean, there's a couple of questions layered within that. The first is it digital? Is it in person? All of these courses are going to absolutely have an in-person element, but they're all going to have a digital element as well. Boot camp, the guys that are signed up for boot camp, you do have and will have more digital prep than the early boot camp guys, because we've just realized that there's more material that we need to get through to get you up to par for an expedition team. And the same is going to be true of these weekend courses. There might be not a ton, but there might be a little bit of digital pre-work. And then it is important to us that you're doing all this in person because, I mean, similar to EMT, pretty challenging to be a decent EMT if you've never actually done the physical stuff. So in terms of your eligibility to teach these courses, that's where, let me go back a couple slides here. That's where this is going to come into play. This level here, the leadership kind of master's level, we might need potentially even a few course tiers in between. But yeah, we're very open, John, to the intent is to be able to allow any guy to become an instructor within the system. Obviously, we have to certify you. So that means you're coming to our training, you're certified as our instructor. I can't just say because you're an EMT, you are certified to teach moto wilderness first aid.
I am certified in wilderness first aid, though.
Wilderness first aid, it's going to be pretty damn close. There are a few caveats to what we're training because we're training very specific to moto injuries. So we're spending more focused time on things like burns and breaks than wilderness first aid, which is kind of a general blanket comprehensive of what to do in the field. We're focusing on using those skills, but more attention to the type of injuries that we see. Bad rashes, burns, breaks, what kind of breaks, and then how to deal with that with moto gear. Anyway, I'm getting too deep into it. Point is it's similar, but we want to make sure that you know what you're talking about when it comes to expedition medic. Yeah. Short answer is yes, there will be an opportunity for anybody to get certified and teach those courses within the next 2 years, let's say. Yeah, we're going to be beta testing a lot of it this year. We're definitely going to be small scale rolling it out 2026. And then 26, 27 is when we're anticipating this is going to be like a fully rolled out system. We just know it takes time to iron out the kinks. Even though we know the system really well, we know it takes time to iron out the kinks as soon as you want to bring other organizations or people into the fold. Zach.
Yeah, when are we going to be able to purchase the membership for either tier 3 or tier 4, and when do you start collecting the dues?
Right now we're looking at March, April is when we're going to be launching the opportunity to buy membership for 2026. And we would start collecting. Let me put it this way. You need to be paid up. You can be paid up in full before you start taking advantage of expeditions. So if you want the 2026 membership, you need to be paid up prior to 2026, which is why we're launching it early this year so that you can go into 2026 and you're able to capitalize on that membership. Some guys are going to want to spread that out over a payment plan, which is why we're opening it up in March. And we have quite a few members that have always paid expeditions in full, and that basically would be the same thing for membership. There will be, I will say this, there will be, for the first time in Freshline's history, a incentive to pay in full versus having a bit of a payment plan. So you're going to get a bit of a discount if you pay in full versus if you want to spread it out over 8 months or 12 months or whatever it is.
So it's more like a payment plan than dues per se. I mean, you get a lot of other stuff with it, but you're essentially just taking payments, ahead of the fact when you actually purchase the expedition, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Tim, what's up, man?
Hey, I think you said it earlier, but I just want to confirm I understand correctly. For the tier 1 members, that $100 a month still accumulates towards a future expedition that they can kind of cash in, pay the extra.
Yeah, it will. So essentially, maybe going too far ahead. That tier 1 is exactly what you guys have already experienced. That $100 a month builds towards a credit. Tier 2, essentially close to the same thing, builds towards a credit. You're doing it on a much more accelerated timeline. Tier 3, I wouldn't say builds towards a credit. I mean, because you're essentially paying for membership, which is, like I said, right now is more or less is an average of what you guys are paying for just an expedition right now. And then obviously tier 4, you're not building credit. You're paying for the perks that come with tier 4. So it's a credit, yes. It keeps operating the way it will, or it has. Sorry.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool. Fish, were there any questions in the chat that are worth addressing on here?
I have been kind of addressing them offline. Just talking about rallies, talking about what that might look like ramping up, and so nothing super important as far as collectively.
One thing that actually has come up both this afternoon, and I'm just going through it now, is shorter expeditions. Hey, can you guys do a week-long expedition as opposed to 2? We tried to do that for 25. We offered a week-long expedition. Of the 200 people that were eligible to take us up on it, 2 took us up on that week-long expedition. So I'm not saying we won't try again in the future. I'm saying that we literally offered it and nobody wanted it when it came time to actually pull out their wallet and book the thing. That being said, one thing that we're going to be pushing much more of within the membership itself is going to be members organizing rides among themselves. So yeah, let me define expedition for us as a club is going to a very challenging third world country. Expeditions like Japan that we've done in the past, not going to happen in the future. The reason for that is we want you guys as members to organize rides, and we want guys to come from other countries. We don't want you to pay us extra because you want to go ride in Portugal. Go because one of the guys in Portugal organized a ride and you want to go over there and do it with those guys. Most of those are going to be a week or less. So a week, 5 days, 3 days. A lot of those rides organized among the members. We want to encourage you guys all day long to do rides that don't cost you any more in all different parts of the world. We got members all over the world. Go to Australia, go to Africa, go to Europe, go to Iceland, go to wherever the hell. Now, it probably, we don't have members in Madagascar. So maybe a little bit different there, but we want to encourage you guys as much as possible to get out with other members and go do those. And those are what we're hoping are going to kind of fill your boots for the 1 week if you can't do the full 2 week expedition. And maybe you want to do a full 2 week expedition every few years, and that's fine. And then we can look at what that looks like, whether it's tier 1 or tier 2. But that's my current answer to that.
I think also, if I can just chime in with Jordan moving into community manager, he's going to be organizing probably, maybe I speak out of turn, but a lot more of the ambassador program, which is going to be facilitating local rides, which can be facilitating BDRs, which can be facilitating and really trying to get members moving toward collectively meeting in person and doing fun things like, let's go ride Baja this weekend. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And being a catalyst for in-country, whether it's the US or Canada or Europe or wherever, I think that's going to be a big benefit of him being in that role.
Yeah, that's absolutely our intent, guys, is for you guys to be able to, what Fish said, ride the BDRs, ride Baja, come and ride the Arctic. Like we've had people say, hey, I want to come ride the Arctic Circle, especially Europeans are like, I want to come ride the Arctic Circle. Like, are you going to do an expedition? No, I'm not going to charge you to come ride the Arctic Circle. We got 1 billion members up here in Canada who do that with you. Borrow a bike from one of them and go enjoy your 2 weeks, and you don't have to worry about that. That's it. That's in addition to everything else you get within the member perks. If we're doing our job right, that's what is going to be happening more and more moving forward.
And hopefully my internet is stable, and these trips are getting harder, expeditions are getting harder, and that's what we want. That was an early vision that Eric and I set of hey, we needed a group of guys around us that are willing to push the limit. And so that's what it needs to be. And so, exactly like Eric said, we're probably not going to do the Japans anymore. We've got New Zealand on the list, stuff like that. But our intention is to do the harder trips that justifies how hard we're vetting. It makes no sense for us to vet guys crazy and then go to Bali or go to, some easy trip. You could do that with your buddies with no planning whatsoever and just show up. Madagascar takes a lot of prep. Any of you that are in leadership or aspiring to leadership, you will know it is a ton of time to get up. With Papua New Guinea, I think my email thread with the owner is up over 200 emails now. And so these are not hey, we're going to show up to Papua New Guinea and just dominate. And that's what we want an expedition from Freshline to be. Is it something that you're I wouldn't dare attempt this on my own without a vetted, very specific brotherhood to back me up. And like Eric said, go to Arctic Circle. You want to go do a ride, where we've got guys all over Europe. I know they're getting together and doing some rides. I know Paolo had a couple of guys over in Portugal kind of running some of the Portugal muster pre-ride stuff. And that is fuel to the fire for us to say, hey, that's how we know this club is working, when we see you guys actually getting out and doing stuff outside of boot camps and getting together. So that is kind of the direction we're going. And so that's kind of why we hesitate to add the shorter stuff, because to us the expeditions are the big crazy ticket items. And do I justify going to Madagascar for a week? No. If you've ever flown to Madagascar, it's something you want to do once in your life. And so could we offer some closer 1 weekers to places like, Mexico, and the one we tried this year was Guatemala for that reason. You can justify the flight to Guatemala for a week. And still it was just kind of meh, it didn't take. So again, it doesn't mean that it's dead. It's just something that we've tried a couple times, and both times to no success. Kind of like the couples trip. We have guys asking a lot if we're ever going to do a unfreshlineized couples trip, and we've kind of said, yeah, maybe. And then every time we try and launch it, it's crickets. And so, we've got lots of one-off stuff that we would like to do, but we got to stick true to what we know we're good at. And what we're good at is going to crazy places in this globe and doing some pretty insane moto adventures. So we're going to stick to that for now. And I wanted to touch base a little earlier at someone said about the dues and do they accumulate, and correct me if I'm wrong, $100 a month is the minimum. So it's not $100 set. It's saying, hey, I can't afford to go on tier 2, 3, 4. What I can do is do $250 a month, $350 a month. whatever it may be, and work out your own schedule. 100 is just the minimum to be viable in the club and get access to what you get access to. But don't look at that and say, oh, I don't want to go on tier 1 because then it's going to take me 6 years to pay for an expedition. That's not its intent. That's the minimum. That's for guys that just want to continue contributing. You know, kind of it's almost like the TBD option for the expedition guys. And so that's a different way to look at it. You know, we dubbed it early as the adventure savings account, being all like, yeah, I'm gonna set up whatever money's not gonna hurt me and the family, and then eventually I'm gonna have a pool, and maybe you don't need to wait until you have the full thing. You wait until you've got $4,000 in there, and you say, hey, I can sling together the other $4,000, and now I'm ready to make it happen. So yeah, we just wanted to make as many options as available to you, because like we said, we don't want to create a system where we eliminate good guys. And we had this conversation of, we had great guys that we absolutely love riding with and have done awesome adventures with, but the system we have now just didn't fit their lifestyle, their finances, anything like that. And that sucks, because those guys are brothers, and now, you know, they're not in. So kind of that was a motivator for like, hey, something needs to change. We need to offer more. As I tell most of you on the assessment, at the end of the day, you know, this is a brotherhood that goes on motorcycle trips. That's what we are. We're brotherhood first, and that's what we're striving to build. And that's why I'm excited for kind of the new job and the new kind of role. Is, yeah, my goal is to hound you guys down and be out like, I'm in California, you better come ride with me. That's it. So that's all I got, guys.
Mitchell had a good question. He said, would your dues drop automatically to tier 1 if you're paid up on the dues for an expedition ride, but haven't taken one out in your time frame? I'm assuming that means within the year that you have. You can push that expedition forward by 1 year. What that would look like, if you're paid up in full on your dues, you would not pay again until the beginning of the next year, and then you would just pay on your dues again for the expedition. You would stay in the same tier. You can just push that expedition forward by 1 year, and then take 2 in the following year.
Yeah.
Colin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about like doing the BDRs or like the bigger rides, you know, locally and stuff like that. Would there be a separate page or spot for that to be posted? Because if you post only a region group, you know, those international guys may never see it. And like, I'm interested in planning like a 5-6 day trip in Alberta here, and just, is there any kind of assist that you guys can provide with, like, you know, what to plan for and how to plan a trip like that?
Yeah, there's a couple answers to that question. One is, we're scared to tell you guys this yet, but we're going to be moving out of Mighty Networks into a different portal that's going to allow you a lot more understanding as a member to be able to manage your own. You can manage your own membership tiers in there. You can see how much you've actually paid up on a tier. Right now, a lot of you guys are asking like, hey, how much do I have left to pay on an expedition? And we have to do it all manually. You're going to be able to do that on your own. Within the new program that we're looking at, part of this as well is going to be, we're going to have a board that has all of the trips that are being organized around the world. So you can literally go on there at any point and see every expedition that's being organized. It's going to be in a calendar. You guys are going to see it. We have always said, and we'll continue to help you guys promote. If you're like, hey, I really would love to get international guys on whatever trip you're organizing, wherever in the world, we will always promote that for you. We'll promote it on these calls. We'll promote it within Mighty Networks. We'll promote it on our texts. We will promote it. If you're like, hey, yeah, I want you to put extra emphasis behind this, we always have and we always will. So there's going to be, those are the two areas where we're going to be pushing those international trips. Or sorry, the member organized trips.
Sweet, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And there will be lots of those. My really, starting summer until Christmas, I plan on driving across the states twice, east to west and west to east, and then back all the way west again. So yeah, it is my job to try and drop in on many of you as I can, and we're going to plan a couple rides. I know there's lots of guys in California already that there's talk about us doing a big ride. And yeah, I want to tap into the Southeast region guys that are already riding together. And obviously we got a huge group of guys in Colorado. And so, yeah, it's well on the way, a lot more than what it is. And that's why we're kind of dropping the shell on you now, be like, hey, prepare for this. And then we're going to spam you with rides that you're going to get depressed because you're going to have to keep saying no to them until you don't.
Don't get me in
And
St.
then,
George again.
Come
yeah,
through Montana.
Yeah, I literally drove. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. So,
Well,
and then the line is to spend the, go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say one thing that's related to that. We've had some discussions about this internally, and this is, I'm going to say, most likely where these are going to go. These organized weekly fireside groups. There's been some debate about like how we organize those groups. The intent, the intent on the forefront right now is actually to organize those groups regionally, so that the guys that you're meeting with and holding accountability with and learning about and learning their lives, those are the same guys that you're actually meeting up with in person for rides, for coffees, for beers, so that you guys are getting to know each other really, really well. That's the intent right now, is that in addition to whatever the ambassador is organizing for the region, you guys are also spending time together digitally. We're not going to force that on you, so it's going to be voluntary for whatever guys want to be part of that. But that has been a big ask from a lot of the membership, is to have that as a platform for you guys to start operating within.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Anything else, guys? The questions are good. They're really good. I hope, I know there's...
It always starts off slow and then drops off a cliff.
Yeah.
So like, oh, no questions. And also it's like bling, bling, bling. And then we're here for 2 hours.
I know there's only 25
that's
of you
good.
guys on the call, and we started with around 50. I am hoping that these new features make sense to you guys, that you understand like that everything that we've looked at here is looking at how do we make this more value to you without any additional ask from you guys. We want to be able to provide a lot more to you. So I'm hoping you guys are able to see and understand that that's what we're doing here. Like, we're here to serve you guys, essentially. That's what we're doing. That's what we're going to continue to do. And that's what's going to be happening as we roll into 25, 26.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right on, guys.
Cool. Well, if there's nothing else.
What a great photo.
I know. I found that last night. I was like, that has to be the parting shot.
I actually remember this moment. I was telling the guys, because we were on a Cebu drawn cart, and I was like, see you guys, I'm going with these guys. They got beer, they got Cebu. I'm out of here. Yeah, it was a great moment. So awesome, guys. Thanks for the good call. My family is desperate to go and get out to lunch. So Fish, let's go meet down in front of One Pacific and go for some lunch. And yeah, as always, I love these calls. They're kind of, sometimes I get tired and I don't want to jump on them. And every time I do, I go away being like, man, I'm so glad I didn't miss the call. Yeah, so I'm excited to engage more. I'm excited to fire up those campfire ones and just to move into the role of getting with you guys more and building the brotherhood like we know it can be. Right now, like we said, we started out with taking that accountability that we have dropped the ball, and that's where we feel we've dropped it the most. Yeah, we still ran some pretty sick expeditions this year, but it's the brotherhood side that we know we can do better, and we will do better. And that comes from input from you and participation from you guys. Like, if we can have this call, have 50 guys on it every week, then that just strengthens the brotherhood for sure. So awesome, guys. Take care. I've been up since 4 a.m, so I'm gonna go grab some lunch and maybe grab a nap. But appreciate you guys, and we will chat soon.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. We appreciate you.
No worries. No worries.
Right on, guys. See you in the next one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, did you have a question?
Not so much a question.